So we have another wonderful guest here at We Don't Have Time here in Baku at COP29 on the wonderful Caspian Sea. The guest is Sharad Tuladhar.
Tuladhar, yes.
Yeah, Chief Policy and Environment and Social Risk Management expert at NMB Bank Limited, Nepal.
Nepal, right.
So delighted to see you. Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure too.
By the way, I should also mention that you're part of the Global Alliance for Banking on Values as well.
Yes, we are the only bank in Nepal who is a member of GAVV.
Exactly, right. And that brings together, that alliance, banks that are doing socially but also environmentally responsible banking. So I think it's in...
When I talk about NMB Bank, sustainability is one of the major strategy of the bank, strategic intent of the bank. And again, FMO, the Dutch Development Bank, is a major shareholder in the bank. So all these in a combination makes us more concerned towards people and planet as well, apart from banking.
Right. So with your long experience in managing risk and climate and environmental risk too, what are some of the things we were warned that would happen 10 years ago in countries that have actually become a reality? Because Nepal is under some stress from climate change, is that correct?
So apart from the global changes that we have seen, when I talk about specifically Nepal, since my childhood, the mountains have lost a lot of snow. So it has turned more black in these years. And the unprecedented rain that happens without warning, and the floods that have increased not only in the rest of the world but also in Nepal. So those have been the major indicators. And for Nepal, hydropower, agriculture and tourism, three being the major economic activities or the business areas. As a bank, we have observed that in hydropower, in agriculture, the climate impacts are even more.
Right. Yes, I know, and you've had this amazing thing where you get this build-up of water, don't you, behind, they're basically lakes that form and then they suddenly burst and come rushing down the mountain like a tsunami of water into the communities. It's really something, yeah.
And we have seen cloud bursts as well.
Really?
Cloud bursts and the Gulf risk, it has risen above the concern level. So that's again is a challenge that we have observed across the years as a part of climate change.
Yeah. So these are some of the risks you're facing, and how you analyze them. How do you respond then? How does a bank deal with these new kinds of risks? Because a risk is also something that will inform you in terms of how you lend money. So how does it work then when you analyze these risks, and how does it affect your lending?
There are two major things when I talk for the developing countries in the global south. One, the data and technical expertise is not there in country like Nepal. So that needs to be enhanced, the technical capability and the tools, probably that's the modern age tools that are available to analyze this, predict the climate change impacts in long term. So that is not there. So it is something that we look forward to. And when you look at the impacts of climate change, one is the risk factor, which is due to the floods that happen, the landslides that happen. And the other part is changing the business modality, the transition of businesses. Say probably the agriculture pattern have changed because of the drought that happens at times and serious floodings that happen at times. So even the business modality are changing. So while lending as a bank, we need to think about the business model as well as the risk associated related to climate change.
Right. So does it mean that if somebody comes and says, I want a loan for a farm, that you might say, well, what are you planning to plant? And they might say, well, this. And you go, well, maybe it might be more profitable and more resilient if you planted something else, right? Do you have those kinds of dialogues or as a bank with, say, farmers, for example, in the agricultural sector?
Yes, that's something we look forward to, and we are doing. As in NMB Bank, I would say we have a technical expert in hydropower. So we have technical engineers who would look at the model, the entire model of the hydropower proposal, the hydropower project, and then provide technical guidance as well. We have ENS officers who would look at the environmental and social aspect to it.
Right.
And like you mentioned, on the agriculture side as well, we have agricultural expert in the bank. So who would have that kind of a dialogue that you mentioned, that what could be the climate impact in a particular business that are they coming up with? So is there any solution that, or are there any step that needs to be taken care of, or is it not a good model to pursue in a long term? So that kind of a dialogue is there because we have specialized people within the bank to take care of these aspects.
Right. So it's not necessarily saying no to somebody, it's saying, have you thought about this? Yeah.
How about, yes.
Okay, that's
Very
really
much,
interesting. You're working quite a lot, I think, with the Nepali government. So the work you do, does it help inform the government? Do you advocate for different policies from the government in respect to managing climate change? What is that relationship?
Yes, because we are associated with these associations, international associations that I mentioned, we have been in touch with the government and the policymakers. So whether it's related to environmental social management, whether it's related to climate finance and climate action, or whether it's related to recently even fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty, so a treaty initiative, we are advocating with the government to build certain standards, build certain monitoring environment, and then have certain tools and data within the country that could help the country to move ahead, managing the environmental and social as well as climate aspects, climate risks.
Right. So you are part of the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty,
right,
and you're part of the Global Alliance for Banking on Values. So you don't invest in fossil fuel projects. Do other banks in Nepal invest in fossil fuel projects?
I would put it this way: we have become a member, or we have signed the initiative treaty recently, and we are on that step already, even before signing the treaty, that we will not expand our fossil fuel portfolio.
Right.
But as of now, it's not only ourselves, but also advocating with the government as well. And I think it is a bit challenging for the banking industry per se to immediately write off or stop financing fossil fuels. There need to be a phased plan, right?
Yeah.
So a long-term plan where all the stakeholders would provide their support. It could be the policymakers, it could be the private sector, the clients of the bank. And then there needs to be a collective consensus where the government will see that this is how we'll phase out fossil fuel, and then that would get replaced by renewable energy. And when you ask that question, I would say that Nepal is a country very rich in hydropower. And two things that we need as a country is, one, funding. It's not possible to go to that extent only within the internal funding that we have. And the other thing is consider hydropower as a green energy. So that again is a challenge that Nepal doesn't have support from international stakeholders or partners, that hydropower is immediately considered as a green source of energy because of the ENS implication or ENS impacts of it. So those are the things. And again, the financing instruments are not that mature as well, whether it's in the stock exchange or the security board, or when we talk about green bonds, climate bonds, and access of Nepalese businesses or Nepalese financial industry to the global partners is limited. So those are the things that would ultimately contribute our transition from fossil fuel to a cleaner energy environment.
Yeah, we had Sean Kidney, the CEO of the Climate Bonds Initiative, on the show last week. particularly looking at how green bonds can help cities transition onto a more climate-friendly path. And they're doing quite well actually globally, aren't they? Green bonds, climate bonds. Have any been issued in Nepal, or are there plans to issue green bonds?
We have internally within the country issued energy bonds. We are the first bank to issue energy bond within the country. But we are working on green bond with help of certain international stakeholders to issue it in the international market as well. So that's something we are looking forward to in coming days. Yeah.
And you invest in renewable energy now, wind or solar?
It is not very clearly stated that hydropower is a clean energy. So that's the challenge. At times, some of the climate fund or green funds do get directed to hydropower, but not on an open manner. So on holistically, or everyone considering hydropower a green energy and supporting Nepal as a country, because we don't have a risk rating again. And again, when we borrow from international partners, the foreign exchange risk and other costs that are associated makes it a little bit challenging for the country.
Do you feel sometimes at these UN climate conferences that people are just sort of sometimes going through the motions of moving the world to a more climate safe place, that the sense of urgency sometimes doesn't feel like it's there? I mean, a country like Nepal is highly vulnerable to climate change. People have already been suffering, particularly on the water issue, as you mentioned. And do you feel that the countries need to get a bit more urgent, getting the money through the door so that they can support countries like Nepal, the bigger countries making even deeper cuts in their emissions? I mean, a sense of speed would be really helpful, would it not?
Yes, this is an opportunity where I would say that international partners, international stakeholders, those who cater to climate funding, should consider, as of now, what we have observed is international stakeholders are engaging with the government only, and largely in making policies and guidelines that are required to ensure all this, whether it's related to climate, whether it's related to environment. Now I think that they need to do two things. One, see some actions to it. The policies are already there. Even in Nepal, as of now, I would say there are 10 policies or framework or guidelines in place, and even the nationally determined contribution and national adaptation plan, it's already there. It's there is a clearly thrashed out outline there, but the budget, the cost that needs to be taken care of, there is a huge gap, huge funding gap. So that needs to be taken care of, and the international support agencies that those are there, they need to think. The second thing is the private sector forms a very big part of the economy in Nepal, whether it's even in agriculture, in hydropower, and tourism that I mentioned. In hydropower as well, it's the private sector who is a major stakeholder. So I think they need to work together with the private sector as well, not only with the government, to see that these policies and plans are put into practice. And the international agency, if possible, some of the climate fund needs to come directly to Nepal, or
good. So more urgency with support funding, so that projects can get out of the door and be realized much faster. We don't need any more talking. We've got enough policy. Now we need some real action. Well done for what you're doing. Congratulations on your work. I think it's really important. Banks like yours are just what the world needs. We don't need banks who are expanding fossil fuels. We need banks that are supporting sustainable development and the livelihoods of the communities they serve. So thank you very much indeed for being with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.